to the What If It's Not Depression Vodcast. I'm your host, Dr. Achina Stein. And today I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Kyrin Dunston. If you like this episode, please click the like button and subscribe. So after discovering the hidden causes of midlife weight gain and fatigue in women, Dr. Kyrin Dunston, who's an obstetrician gynecologist, lost a life-changing 100 pounds and fixed her adrenal insufficiency, or also known as adrenal fatigue. She's a pioneer of female hormonal justice. Dr. Kyrin hosts the Hormone Prescription podcast with new episodes weekly, and she has been featured on CBS, NBC, Reader's Digest, the Huffington Post, First for Women, Best Self, and more. She's your midlife metabolic ninja who will show you the steps to take to unleash your best health yet. So thank you for joining me, Dr. Kyrin. I love that you are able to make time in your schedule for me. I know how busy you are. And I would love for you to talk about your journey, because that's incredible that you found, here you are, a doctor, an obstetrician gynecologist, and you found yourself having hormonal issues and figured out the ways to fix them. And that's so true for a lot of functional medicine doctors. They learn what they don't know in order to fix their own lives, because they're going through their own health issues. And then they become this incredible, power force in helping other people as well.
So true. Thank you for having me, Achina. I went into medicine because I wanted to work with women and I wanted to help them to the highest degree possible. So I looked around and I said, well, that means I go get my MD. And then when I did, I loved it, delivering babies and being a part of women's lives, that special private part of their lives. It was just really wonderful. But at some point, my health started to suffer and I gained so much weight. I weighed 243 pounds. And I also suffered with pain in my body every day, fibromyalgia. I had horrible, debilitating depression and anxiety. And at one point was on 5 psychoactive medications to control anxiety and depression, even though I really had nothing to be depressed or anxious about.
Right.
I had irritable bowel gastritis. My hair was falling out. I had no sex drive. And I looked and felt 20 years older than I was. And here I am, supposed to know more about women's health than anyone else, right? You're board certified by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. They said I knew more about women's health than anyone else. And clearly I was not healthy and couldn't fix myself. So it really started this period of disillusionment where I was saying to my colleagues, are we really helping anyone? Look at me, I'm obviously not healthy, but I think there's something wrong. I have symptoms of low thyroid. I do a thyroid profile. It comes back, quote unquote, normal. I just must be crazy. That's what I started. I came to the conclusion. Yeah. And I really was in this kind of hopeless, helpless place. And then I started looking around and saying, I thought I didn't do the right diet. I thought I didn't exercise enough. I blamed myself. Even my doctor blamed me. She told me I ate too much and didn't move enough, right? Which is what we do as doctors.
Right, exactly.
And I thought I was doomed to, I actually was having back problems. So I thought I was going to have to go on disability because I couldn't do surgery anymore because of my back. And anyway, without going into all the details, I started looking around and saying, now all women in their 40s aren't suffering like this. A lot of them are, with weight, energy, no sex drive, hair loss, but not all of them. What do some women, what are they doing differently? What do they know? And then one of my patients who I did the usual midlife dance with, right? She couldn't sleep. I gave her Ambien. She didn't feel like herself. I gave her an SSRI. She had a little gastric upset. I gave her a proton pump inhibitor. She was getting migraines. I gave her some Incheck. So she left my office with a fistful of prescription, including birth control pills for her wonky 40-year-old periods.
Classic traditional approach.
Right? And it didn't fix her. Right. So she went away. I didn't have any other answers in my toolbox, right? My toolbox was a standard MD toolbox.
Right.
And she went away, and then she came back a year later looking like a new woman. She had lost the 30 pounds she couldn't lose. Her hair was full. Her eyes were shining. She was smiling. She says, I feel amazing. So I had to ask her, well, what did you do? And she said, well, I learned about these hormone tests that you never told me about or did with me. And I went to this other town and worked with this doctor who looked at my hormones like you never did. And she did these treatments you never did. And I'm all better.
Wow.
And I was like, what? And she clearly was a walking billboard. So I just became obsessed. I was like, I had to know what this was that I didn't know as a board certified MD. So that just opened Pandora's box and my toolbox expanded. I learned about salivary cortisol testing. That's what told me I had adrenal insufficiency, adrenal fatigue. I learned about sex hormone testing, which isn't a standard of care in women's health. Did that. I was deficient in progesterone, did the right thyroid tests and read them the right way, the 8 tests.
Right.
And I was hypothyroid, even though I didn't have a disease by mainstream criteria, I was hypothyroid. And then it just opened Pandora's box. I joined a fellowship program with the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine in anti-aging, metabolic, and functional medicine, and learned how to really not just control symptoms with drugs and surgery. That's what I learned in my MD training. Right. But go beyond that. How do you create health and truly heal the body? And so that's what I did. And I lost 100 pounds, got off all the psychoactive prescriptions. Only prescriptions I have now are my hormones, and just reversed the clock by about 20 years.
Yes. Yes. I have had the same kind of history. I mean, it wasn't the weight issues, but definitely mobility and brain fog and depression. Feeling 20 years older, I definitely feel 20 years younger as well. And it wasn't just hormones, just like you said, it wasn't just hormones. You did lots of other things as well. Right. Right. But it was a piece of it that was a part, that was big for you. That's fantastic. How many years ago did this start, this journey?
Oh gosh, that probably was 14 years ago now.
Right.
Yeah. And I can vouch for Achina 20 years younger, because if you see the two of us cutting up on the dance floor, you'd be like, that's a bunch of 20-year-olds. So we will outdance any 20-year-old.
Yes. That is so true. Yeah. I played ultimate frisbee last night, 9 o'clock last night, and I outran most of the women that were on the field. So I feel pretty good physically in that regard for sure. And I'm grateful for the hormones that I have been taking too. So, you did mention a couple words. You said adrenal fatigue, and so there's other names for it: adrenal insufficiency, HPA axis dysfunction. Could you talk more about that to let our audience know what that is? I actually have not interviewed anyone to talk about that. So that would be great to talk about cortisol and pregnenolone steal, or, and to let everyone know what that's all about.
Sure. So most women at midlife are aware that their hormones, when they're being affected by their hormones, right? Their weight might start going up. They might start being a little tired, having brain fog, dysthymia, irritability, things like this. But usually they blame it on their sex hormones. But I say there's 7 main metabolic driving hormones that are important. It's not only the sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but also your insulin, your thyroid, and your DHEA and cortisol. I call cortisol Queen Cortisol. She is your main stress hormone. DHEA is her sidekick. She's made in the adrenal glands, these small kind of walnut-sized triangular shaped glands that sit on top of your kidneys, and make over 18 steroid hormones that are essential for your survival, one of which is aldosterone, which regulates your fluid balance through your kidneys. It can make some of your sex hormones, but for women, your ovaries are the predominant manufacturer of those when you're in your fertile years, and also make DHEA and cortisol. So cortisol is your survival hormone. It has everything to do with your sleep-wake cycle, your energy level, your weight, your immune system function, whether you get sick or not, whether you get cancer or not. So it's one of your, if not the master metabolic regulator. That's why I call her Queen Cortisol.
Right.
And she, like a lot of these other hormones, all of them, is controlled by your brain in the hypothalamic pituitary area. So a lot of people don't realize that hormones actually are a part of your nervous system, right? They originate in your brain. And if you think about it, one part of your brain is long nerves followed by a short synapse where neurotransmitters go across, followed by long nerves. And that's kind of what I call the hardwired part of your brain. But the wireless part of your brain, just like in your house, the internet comes in and you can plug your computer in, that's hardwired. And then you can get the signal wirelessly, that's your wireless. You have the same system with your brain, hardwired, and then the wireless, and your wireless internet in your body is your hormones. And so what you have is you have neurotransmitters called hormones, specialized, being secreted from the brain, and then they have to travel through the bloodstream to specialized receptive tissue. So it's kind of like a neuron analogous tissue that receives the information, translates it, and then that may be the final destination for that message, or that specialized tissue may secrete another hormone or specialized neurotransmitter to go to another specialized organ. So basically you have these two hardwired branches. So it starts in the hypothalamus pituitary. And then, for instance, for the adrenals, ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone, is the hormone that's secreted by that area, goes to the adrenal glands and tells the adrenal glands, make cortisol, make DHEA. So I guess your question is, that's how the normal system is regulated. What is adrenal insufficiency or adrenal fatigue? So like I said, a lot of women think that at midlife, all of their quote unquote hormonal symptoms are due to sex hormone problems. But actually, what they don't realize is that a lot of these symptoms are caused or exacerbated by HPA axis dysfunction. Right. So HPA, hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis dysfunction. And most women, by the time they hit midlife, have some degree of adrenal dysfunction, some degree of adrenal insufficiency. You're not making enough cortisol, or maybe dysregulation, you're making way too much, or maybe you're making the right amount, but the diurnal variation is supposed to be higher in the morning, lower in the afternoon and evening. It's kind of like starting your car, takes more gas than keeping it running. So in the morning, your cortisol goes up really high, and then it comes down throughout the day and has to go down at night for you to sleep. So you can have what we call phase 1, 2, or 3 dysregulation. And most women have some degree of adrenal dysregulation, but they have no idea because nobody has educated them. No one has taught them how to speak hormone. Right. No one has taught them how to translate the language of symptoms into what your body is trying to tell you. In fact, we are taught at a very young age that symptoms are the problem and we need to stop symptoms. And that when we stop symptoms, we claim victory, right? We have a headache. We don't ask, why do we have the headache, and investigate. There's always a reason why. We just want the headache gone. So we take some painkiller to knock out the pain messengers. And when the headache's gone, we claim victory. Meanwhile, we've told our bodies to shut up and sit in the corner because we don't want to hear what she has to say. Right. And if you don't listen to what she has to say, then you're never going to discern the messages that really will lead you to true health. So that's what a lot of women are experiencing at midlife, is actually HPA axis dysfunction and not sex hormone imbalance.
Right. In fact, many women go to get just their sex hormones balanced, but they really should make sure that their adrenals are being handled first, then their thyroid, then their sex hormones. It really should be in that order. But maybe even before that, their gut should be fixed first, then their adrenals, or maybe, at the same time. and then go to thyroid and
Mhm.
sex hormones. There's a certain order of doing things, and there might be some variation of that depending on the practitioners, but it's important to address all of
Mhm.
those issues, right?
Yeah. So, how I like to explain it is because I see a lot of women confused. Do
Mm,
I start with my gut? Do I start with my thyroid? Do I start with my cortisol? Where do I start? And so this is what I say. If you look at systems theory, which is something that I studied when I was in college, I was a psychology major, and one of the classes I took was on systems theory. What is most important in any system? Your body is a system. If you go into any third grade classroom today, and there's a substitute teacher in because the regular teacher is out sick and she didn't give the lesson plan to the substitute teacher. She didn't tell the substitute teacher what's expected of the children in terms of bringing their homework, behavior in class, lesson plan, anything. What are you going to find in that classroom? Chaos. You're going to find kids running around throwing spitballs, playing tag, pulling each other's hair. There is chaos. Why is there chaos in that system that is a classroom? Because there's been no communication.
right.
And communication is essential for order in any system. When there's a hurricane in a certain area, what ensues? Chaos. What's the first thing that has to be done to restore order to that area? You have to bring in communication. You have to get the phone lines up. How many ambulances do we need? How many, hospital beds? How much food? How many people are injured, right? There has to be communication for order to be restored. Then they have to get the roads open. That's also communication. So communication is most important in your body. And what are the communicators? Your nervous system and hormones are the communicators. Luckily, our hardwired nervous system is way hardier than our wireless internet, probably just like in your house, right? In my house, if I plug my computer into the wall, it never goes out. But the wireless, I probably have problems several times a week. Cannot connect. So you got to restore the communication, and that's hormones. So in my opinion, hormones have to be dealt with first to get the order and the communication and the regulation online. Do you have to fix the gut and detoxify? You do, but you can do that till the cows come home. If you don't fix the communication, then the regulation isn't there and order won't be restored.
Right. Great answer. That's perfect. Really, really great answer. I really like the way you explain that. Yeah. So, we talked about your journey and adrenal HPA axis dysfunction. We've talked a little bit about, what are the 2 hormone prescriptions that you think every woman needs over 40 to thrive? What would you say were the top 2?
Right. So there are really only 2. And the 2 are, one, the prescription that you need an actual prescription written from a licensed healthcare provider. And that may be depending on your particular lab test results. We always say test, don't guess. Estradiol, estriol, progesterone, testosterone, T3, T4, right? Might be some of those, might be none of those. And then the prescription that you don't need a written prescription from a licensed practitioner for. And that's for the other members of that 7 main metabolic drivers: your cortisol, DHEA, thyroid, and insulin. So there are things that you need to do to balance those, because all these 7 hormones, they're a family, and they play together. And just like in your family, when one person has a problem, doesn't everybody end up having some type of a problem? A problem is not isolated in a family, right? That's what family is. We're connected emotionally.
Another
The
system.
system, another system. So if someone is challenged, like if a child gets a failing grade on a test, are mom and dad affected? Yes. Are the siblings affected? Yes. Everybody's affected. So it's the same. But the 2 hormone prescriptions is, one is a written licensed prescription, and the other one is it's your prescription plan. It's the things you need to do to balance your cortisol, your insulin, your DHEA, and your thyroid. And that has to do with diet and lifestyle, and may have supplements and things like that.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. So I think we've also talked a little bit about, natural hormone therapy and how you feel that it is a requirement for healthy aging, that practically everybody would probably benefit from having some type of hormone therapy. Is that correct? True?
Yeah, I mean, the truth is, nobody talks about it like this, but menopause is a terminal condition.
Right. Mhm.
Um, the earlier you go through menopause, the shorter your lifespan. So it's directly tied to your lifespan.
Mhm.
And that is the definition of a terminal condition. It affects your lifespan. And I know nobody's talking about it. I'm the first, but I'm a realist. I'm doing a hormone bliss challenge right now, Achina, with over 100 women. And, I said this to somebody, one of our colleagues, that, menopause is a terminal condition. Nobody's calling it what it is. And she said, well, that's a little harsh, Kyrin. I don't think people want to hear that right now. So I asked my ladies in my challenge, do you want the truth, or do you want me to sugarcoat it and not talk about the truth? And they said, we want the truth, all in capital letters in the Zoom chat, and unmuted and said that.
Yeah. So yeah, unpack that a little bit. So why do
Yeah,
you, what came together for you that you'd made that conclusion?
just looking at the data, right? The data is clear that the earlier you go through menopause, the shorter your lifespan. So the time when you go into menopause, it's directly related to your lifespan. It shortens it, and it also increases not only death, but disability. Increased rates of Alzheimer's and dementia, right? Muscle mass loss, which increased fat gain, which leads to overweight and obesity. 75% of women by the time they're 60 are overweight or obese. That decreases our mobility. It decreases our self-esteem. It has a whole host of consequences, increases inflammatory chemicals, increased risk of osteoporosis and osteopenia, which increase risk of hip fractures. Coupled with the cognitive and brain changes, we have poor stability. We have an increased risk of falling and fracturing a hip. 1/3 of women who do that will die from that. 1/3 will not be able to live independently anymore. They'll have to live in an assisted living. So it really affects the quality of life. And as a profession, corporate medicine really ignores the fact that women are going to live in hormonal poverty for about 1/3 of their life now, right? Our lifespan has markedly increased over the past 100 years. Our lifespan is around 82 years. Average age of menopause is 51. So we're going to live 30 years in menopause, and that's a state of hormonal poverty. The majority of women have almost no estradiol and estriol, the two main estrogens, progesterone, and about 80% of women don't have enough testosterone. And all of these hormones are essential for all of your tissues in your body, right? We're used to thinking about them like they're just about sex because they're called sex hormones. But the truth is they're not. When I went through my OBGYN residency, really what I was taught and the framework was, we're just little men, and our sex hormones are a little bit different. And it's kind of like the special little black bag you would wear to a black tie event that you only take out when you need it on special occasions, right? You just have these little accessory organs. You've got a uterus in case you want to have a baby. And that's all these sex hormones are about. And that's really the end of sentence. Yeah. But what I've learned on my journey
I know that's
is
not
that
true.
We are foundationally, fundamentally different. We are really biologically dissimilar, and our sex hormones are about our survival and our thriving, and they're about our brain function, they're about our eye function, our bones, our heart, right, our lungs, our gastrointestinal system. So if you want to live optimally from 51 to 82,
right,
it is going to be impossible to do it in hormonal poverty, right? Nobody would argue that financial poverty is devastating, right? Would anyone argue that? They would say, oh my gosh, yes, financial poverty is devastating to someone's life. But the fact that corporate medicine really ignores 60 plus symptoms of menopause and all the diseases that it contributes to and the shortening of lifespan, and says there are only 2 symptoms of menopause that you should treat for: vaginal dryness or urogenital atrophy and hot flashes. That's it.
Yes.
And you should use hormones in the least dose possible for the shortest amount of time is insane.
Right.
And why is this allowed? You know, we could go off on that tangent, but
right. But there's also a discrepancy about the types of hormones, the synthetic hormones versus the bioidentical. And much of the research that's against hormones is really using synthetic hormones, whereas the bioidenticals are actually life-saving for many people. So big difference.
Right. They are, but you know, even our doctors and scientists doing the research get confused. They don't understand the difference between a synthetic hormone that's chemically dissimilar from a woman's natural hormones and a biologically identical. So you will get confusion. Most doctors are confused. They think that equine horse estrogen is the same as estradiol, and it's not. And even in our research studies, they show their confusion, because in one sentence they'll say, we used a progestin, medroxyprogesterone acetate, and then the next sentence they'll say the progesterone showed, and that's not progesterone.
Right. Not the same thing.
Right. And there's a double standard, because nowhere are we giving men horse testosterone.
Right.
Right. Men get biologically identical hormones.
Right.
But we women, we're going to get horse estrogen. You know, I think there are a lot of political issues that are affecting our health, not just when it comes to pro-life, pro-choice. That's one. But we as women are subject to a lot of these cultural biases when it comes to our health.
Right. Absolutely. So, you know, we talked a little bit about gut health and toxicity. Can you tie in all of that and how it's related to hormones?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, the foundation of a woman's health is her hormones. That's communication central, the regulators, 7 main metabolic drivers. But then you have to look at what's affecting those. So we talked about Queen Cortisol, the HPA axis, and she is very sensitive, right? What is that story of the Princess and the Pea where she sleeps? They put the mattress, the pea under all those mattresses, and can she feel it? And she feels it. The Queen Cortisol is like that. So you have to look at all the peas under her mattress, her mattresses. And some of the things that get her irritated are inflammation from the gut, inflammation from toxicity in the body. That can be from biologic inflammation like chronic bacterial infections, chronic viral infections, chronic parasitic infections. Most Americans are not aware that over 60% of us actually have parasites in our gut. So food sensitivities, right? So it can be from gut health, but then chronic viral infections, parasites, bacterial infections, molds, yeast, but also non-biologic offenders like chemicals in our environment. It could be heavy metals, it could be plastic, it could be petroleum byproducts, artificial flavorings, coloring, scents, silicons. I mean, just whole list of 85,000 new chemicals introduced into the environment since 1950. And the average woman has traces of 400 toxic chemicals in her body. The average woman uses 18 personal care products before she leaves the house each morning, all of which contain toxic chemicals that she's not aware. There have been no regulatory changes to protect us from these contaminants since the inception of the guidelines, which I want to say was like 70 years ago for personal care products. They really have made no changes to that. So these toxins, be they biologic, chemical, affect Queen Cortisol.
Right.
So part of fixing her and helping her is getting the peas out from under her mattress. And that means healing the gut, decreasing inflammation, and detoxifying the body.
Right. The one thing that you didn't mention is stress. I don't think people really realize how much stress alone, all by itself, can actually cause significant hormonal changes. Do you agree? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And, there's the stress that is overtly stressful, right? Situations that are overwhelming to your nervous system. And a lot of us have been dealing with that the past couple of years. But also how you perceive stress, your stress resilience and the thoughts that you think in response to stressors, because our stress response system was developed thousands of years ago in the Stone Age to evade a tiger, help us survive being chased by a tiger. We don't have tigers today,
right,
but our mind thinks that we do.
right.
And so, yes, that's huge. That was a huge part of my story too. With, every time a baby's getting ready to come, it's like a 747 jumbo jet getting ready to land and a potential disaster, right?
Yes.
So that was a huge part of my adrenal fatigue.
Wow. Yeah. So I'm so glad that you were able to talk about that so intelligently and really in a way that people understand how it's all connected. It's really important to lay it out in the way that you did so people understand the importance of that. So how can people get in touch with you? I know I have your website and you're on Instagram and Facebook and you on YouTube as well. And you also are going to be giving us a free report, 10 benefits of natural hormone therapy and the top 10 mistakes people make with it. Thank you for that. And I know that's associated with the Hormone Club. Why don't you mention a little bit about the Hormone Club for us?
Sure. So you can find me two places or several places, but the hormoneclub.com, make sure you put the in front, is a telemedicine solution I created for women to obtain biologically identical hormone therapy and natural T3, T4 for thyroid. It's a telemedicine solution available in 47 states in the US. The only states we don't service are New York, New Jersey, and Rhode Island because of state laws. You can get that free report. Hopefully you'll have the link in the show notes,
right,
to find out the 10 benefits of natural hormone therapy and also the 10 mistakes most people make with it, and find out more about the Hormone Club. And then you can find me at Kyrin Dunston, MD.com. I'll spell it because it's a little different. It's KYRINDUNSTONMD.com. That's my home website. I am at Kyrin Dunston, MD on Instagram and Facebook. Come join me on Instagram, and I do lives frequently. You can DM me questions and join me on the lives.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I'm definitely going to refer a couple patients to you because hormones, when it comes to these types of hormones, the sex hormones in particular, that's kind of where I want to hand off to a specialist. And I'm going to hand off as many people as I can because, as you know, my practice is in Rhode Island, but I see a lot of patients in Massachusetts. And so if there is a match there, I'm happy to send them forward.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate your expertise. And I'm so glad you're in the world to provide this service.
Thank you for having me. Thanks everybody for listening. And, if you're suffering out there and you're not getting the answers in your corporate medical doctor's office, just keep looking. You're in the right place if you found Dr. Achina's podcast. So keep listening.
Okay, thanks.